In my time, I have played a lot of Pong. If you're interested in video games as a medium, you just can't avoid it. It's the cornerstone that everything is built on, and it's been cloned more times than I can count. Everybody in the 1970s had a Pong machine, and everyone who made a game console before 1983 had a version of Pong. Big Sports 12 is the Cassette Vision's collection of Pong-style games, among a couple other things, and it's a bit rough. This is another case of Epoch repurposing their existing game consoles into the interchangeable Cassette Vision format. This was originally sold under the title System 10 all the way back in 1977. As you might expect, there were 10 games on the System 10 game, and there are 12 games on Big Sports 12, so there have been at least a few modifications before they released it here. You rotate through your game modes by hitting Select, and they automatically start playing on their own after a couple of seconds. You can reset the game by pressing Start. All of the games play to 15 points, so there is some consistency across them. There's no opposing AI for any of these games. The best you get is that a few of them have patterns that a target follows. You'll have to find another human to play against if you really want to engage with it. The first 5 games on the cartridge are all derived from Pong. Game 1 is Tennis, the most familiar version, though you always have 4 paddles on the screen. Every paddle is controlled by a different dial on the Cassette Vision, so if you're playing with 4 people, you'll really have to crowd in there. The front paddles are always a lot smaller than the back ones. There's no way to adjust that. Game Mode 2 is supposed to be volleyball. It adds a dashed line as a net between the players, and that net can reflect the ball back. You only score a point if the other team misses, and they were the ones to miss in the last volley. So you have to get 2 goals in a row in order to gain a point. Game Mode 3 is called Practice, and your goal is to reflect the ball 15 times before you miss. And you have 15 chances to do this. The score on the left is how many times you've bounced, the score on the right is what chance you're on. This mode introduces one of the worst things in Big Sports 12. You can now move the paddles horizontally. The top dial controls the up and down motion, the bottom dial controls the left and right motion. Yes, this is incredibly confusing. And of course, since there's 2 paddles in this mode, both sides of the Cassette Vision get used. This strange control scheme continues into the next mode, which is Soccer, and here the goal has narrowed on both sides. The ball always bounces when it hits a paddle, so it's possible to knock the ball into your own goal here. Game Mode 5 is Squash. Here, you hit the ball, and then the other player has to hit the ball. The ball also has to bounce off the opposite wall before the other paddle can strike it. Those are all the ball and paddle-based games, but obviously we've got another 7 modes to go. The next 3 modes are shooting games. They all have the same basic structure. You're controlling the paddle on the left-hand side of the screen, moving up and down, and after a brief period, a shot will come out of it. A target will drop downward on the right-hand side of the screen, and you have to steer your bullet into the target. The bullet will move with the paddle, so you don't have to line things up in advance. There are 15 shots, and your goal is to see how many times you can hit the target. The 3 different shooting game modes are a blank field with no obstacles, the volleyball net, which will just block your shot, and finally the volleyball net but it's moving. These shooting game modes really aren't that interesting. Steering the shot makes things rather boring, actually. The final 4 modes are also shooting games, but now we're getting into something special. The Big Sports 12 Minkanju, or Civilian Firearm. It's a replica Mauser C98, and I do mean replica. It has the movable sights, you can put the rifle stock on it, it has all of the manufacturing marks on it to indicate that it is a real gun made by Mauser. Of course, that won't hold up under close examination, since it's also made of plastic, has Made in Japan embossed in it, and has a cord coming out of the grip that ends in the same style of connector as a 1/4-inch headphone jack. But beyond that, it really does look realistic from a distance. I wouldn't be shocked if some people tried holding up pachinko parlors with one of these. To fire it, you even have to cock the hammer. The actual button that sends the signal to the console isn't attached to the trigger, it's behind that hammer, and everything else is mechanical. It's also really noisy to use. Imagine this sound going on continuously as you attempt to play a game. The light gun that Big Sports 12 uses is actually the exact same light gun that System 10 could use. It was another optional accessory for that console, so Epoch was repurposing some of their stuff here. There are 4 different light gun games, but again, they're all basically the same. A square appears somewhere on the screen that you have to shoot. You have a limited amount of time in which you can do this, and if you don't hit it in that time, then it counts as a miss. That does mean you can take multiple shots at a given square. There are 15 rounds, and your goal is to get as many hits as possible. The first one has the square bouncing around the screen in a diagonal motion. The second has the square appear in one of 9 possible positions on the screen. It will change what position it's in every few seconds. The next mode has the square following a path approximating that of shooting skeet. That also means once it's gone off the screen, it counts as a miss. And the final mode, for Big Sports 12, has the white square traveling in a straight horizontal line. Not the most exciting of options. I noticed while using my gun that it wasn't especially sensitive. Some of that might be because it's over 40 years old, but it's also 1977's photoresistor tech. It's not going to be especially sensitive. If you want to use this hardware, you're really going to have to crank up the brightness and contrast on your television set for it to even have a chance of working. And that's Big Sports 12. And I have to say, I really wasn't fond of this package. The best game of the 12 is Tennis, and that's the one that's the straightforward Pong clone. Every other addition they made to the formula really didn't work very well, and adding horizontal motion to the paddles by having players twist another knob was just horrible. The shooting games felt like afterthoughts, and the light gun is an interesting novelty, but it's not something that I'd return to. Nintendo's own gun that comes 3 years later is much more responsive and effective. This is a situation where it was neat that they could do it, but it's not good enough to be interesting to play yet. Big Sports 12 feels like an obligatory package. Epoch had these games sitting around. It was part of the Cassette Vision's mission to bring those consoles to this console, and they did it, but that didn't make it worth playing.